think the Cowboys would trade out of the first round this year?
Yes.
You do.
For sure.
I have a feeling that they're like, hey, look, we got this first round pick. Let's take this first round pick. That's just my feeling on it, because I don't want another special teams draft. And I know like second round they can still hit there too, but I just don't want them to say we'll settle for something else.
I definitely get what you're saying. I just wonder if they're like, hey, we have 20 or 18 first round grades, and by the time it gets around to them, there's nobody left, and there's somebody who desperately wants to get up to 26 or just regularly wants to get up to 26, and you're like, well, you can pick up an extra second or third rounder. I think they view it more from, like, I feel like the ideology of this team has changed and this franchise has changed. I know that's tough when Jerry's still in charge or if you think Steven's in charge, but I do feel like the Cowboys are more apt with Will McClay to be like, you give me an extra second-round pick, I'll get you an extra starter or a guy who will be an extra starter, as opposed to in 2009 where it 100% felt like, well, we got to get a long-distance cold weather kicker, and we got to get this because our team is so awesome, we don't really need anybody.
From the 817, it will be an O lineman or trade back for sure. Yeah, Kevin, if I want them to trade up, I want Will Anderson. So
okay.
Let me go get Will Anderson.
Let me try that again. A more reasonable
come on, you can still do it. Like, if that's the dude you want, is that
actually,
not a guy
can you? Like, wouldn't you have to trade up to like
it's going to cost you.
Your entire draft class will not get you up to Will Anderson.
What about next year's draft class?
Oh my gosh! All right,
that's innovative thinking.
It might.
Thanks, Mike.
Just because the math doesn't say it doesn't mean Arizona won't do it.
Thank you.
Man, that's a fair point. All right, but hold on. I'll get back to Mike because I know his thoughts. Corey,
what?
Fine. It's Arizona. They accept. Would you like to make the deal for all of your picks
For the next 2 years?
No, for just this year.
For this year only?
For number 3 pick.
I'm in.
Bam.
Shut up.
What do I need to have?
Why
What
are
else
you
do I need to
surprised? He just asked you for the next 2 years as if that was a reasonable sentence.
I was going to say no to
That's
the
a
next
good
2
point.
years, but for this year, yeah, man, I get a nice defensive player that's going to be there for years and be great. Yes, dude. And I got Micah. Come on. Good luck offenses against me. What else do you need? You're look, we've already been told that we got Terrence Steele at guard, maybe. I don't know if that makes any sense. Somebody recently told me that was like Connor Williams at guard, so good luck there. No, quite honestly, Kevin, the player that I've kind of coveted for a while that I would be very excited if I was able to get him somehow. And I don't know, is it just a trade up with my first and a sixth? It would be Joey Porter Jr. Like I would want him. To add more cornerback depth. I'm always in for that. You got Bland. I know you're excited about what he can do, but I like depth at the corner position. And Gilmore's not going to be around forever.
Sure.
And if you listen to Chiafalo, then the idea is, look, he doesn't even want to bring back Trayvon Diggs. So I would like to add that player if I'm going to move up for somebody specifically.
So I know that everybody that studies the draft says no to this. But would you trade Kelvin Joseph, Osa Odigizua, Chauncey Golston, Nashawn Wright, Jabril Cox, Josh Ball, Simi Fehoko, Quentin Bohanna, Israel Mukwamu, and Matt Fairnuke for one of the Bosas?
Is that Farniok?
Farniok.
He planted
Oh my
on
God,
Mukwamu.
sure.
Yeah, I would do that too.
I feel like
absolutely.
most
I
everyone
just traded my whole 2021 draft for Micah Parsons. So I just named you all of those guys. Like I just named you our 2nd through 7th round picks, and we had 3 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 sixths. Like I just traded. So that's when people are like, oh, I get why when I bring this up to Zach as kind of a joke, but being serious because I know it'll never happen. He's like, no, I want all those picks. All right, so you want all of those guys over Micah Parsons.
I hear you. That 2nd round pick especially hurts in that scenario where I'm like, yeah, I would obviously give him away for nothing.
Yeah.
And so in your scenario for Joey Porter, what if it was like a 4th? Because I think you're probably looking more at like a 3rd or a 4th to make that move.
How far up do you think that is? Because, and I'm just looking at McShay's draft.
20.
McShay has him at 23 to the Vikings.
Sure.
And it's going to take a 1st and 4th to do that?
Well, I mean, It'll essentially take your 4th round pick because, like, obviously you'll just be swapping.
Okay.
To do that, to move up to 23, you're talking about your 4th round pick.
Yeah, I would be happy with a slight move up, or I mean, a lot of people will freak out and go, they could have just waited for him to fall. That's not necessarily when the phones are ringing and you're having these conversations. You get a pretty good idea that somebody's probably going to scoop that guy up next. If this team's not going to trade with you. So that's kind of the vein of, or, a lot of Georgia players, Kevin. I'll take some Georgia players. Jalen Carter's fascinating to me because of where he could land on the board.
I know that it would seem like the power play from his agent has led people to believe that there's no chance he's dropping out of the top 10, but I do see Jalen Carter get brought up if he moved into the teens, or maybe more specifically, like the late teens, because that might be a better shot that you have at picking him up because if you're just talking about like, hey, I want to move up to Washington's pick, that is absolutely going to cost you your 2nd round pick. Assuming anybody there still cares, or maybe they're still hashing out ownership stuff while that is going down. But if you want to move like up into the middle of the 1st round, that's going to cost you at least your 2nd round pick, versus if you trade up to 19, then maybe you can get away with your 3rd round pick, or it might still cost you your 2nd.
I am interested in your feeling. Is there any way you would trade up for an offensive lineman? And and maybe we can ask Steven this question coming up at noon, because there are some offensive linemen that are going to be going higher up in the draft.
Sure.
But we need to figure out what we're doing with Tyler Smith. We need to figure out what we're doing across the offensive line. And is it going to be best 5? And Tyron Smith's one of my best 5, but I have him out at right tackle, and that's the best place for him.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions about what they're doing there, and I would like to get some thoughts there from Steven, but would you trade up into the teens for an offensive lineman? You're saying no because it's not sexy, even though it might be the most beneficial thing to your team.
No, I'm trying to think about how far you have to move for Darnell Wright, because the kid from Tennessee and the position flex that he has, if I have to go...
McShay has him at 16 to the Commanders.
Okay. So the Commanders in this scenario do still care, and they are still going to draft. They're not caught up
just
in
imagine that they're not in a weird spot.
Okay. 16 is probably too rich for my blood.
Okay. For an offensive lineman?
Yeah, it's not just that. For that...
For innies?
For that particular player.
Okay.
There are other players where I think your value system is changing, but for that particular player, I think maybe around like 20, which then you'll definitely have to sacrifice your 3rd round pick, and that's probably going to be what you're looking for. But then I know that I have like not only a good current offensive line, but I feel confident in my scouting that I have created an offensive line of the future. Because, like if you went with the kid from Tennessee, if you go with Tyler Smith and you go with Terrence Steele, at least you feel like, hey, we might have like a pretty good shell of an offensive line for the next generation of offensive line. So I think that would be something that I would consider. Now, on the concept of the trade down, I know we all fear the backup draft because some people have like, I don't like the trade down because that 5th year option is valuable. I will say that's definitely true depending on the position. I think there are some positions where it doesn't hit you as hard as you might think it would.
Like what?
Like safety, for example.
You hate safety.
No. I'm just saying, like the value chart in the NFL has spoken about that. But I think safety or linebacker, you would take less of a hit as opposed to clearly quarterback. I know comes up for a lot of people, and maybe even now wide receiver.
All right. You want to trade back out of the 1st round. Here's the thing. The Eagles then also have 30.
Right.
And that means you give them 2 picks where you didn't get to possibly snag somebody like they did with Dallas Goedert before you. That means that you're backing up and letting them take 2 picks that maybe you should have had. Now, I trust Will McClay to say the talent wasn't there.
If you're right. But in my scenario, it's that they would be trading, like, let's say, for example, with Las Vegas. And you would take Las Vegas's 2nd and 3rd round picks, which are 38 and 70. And so now one of the arguments is you have 3 of the top 70, 4 of the top 90 picks, but you don't get your first round
You
pick.
get a good guard there?
Yes, exactly. But if you're trading back that far, you're sacrificing that player that Philly might be interested as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're going to trade back, then you're not trading back that far if you think, hey, this player might get taken in the next 4 picks. If you're trading back into the second round and think this player might get taken in the next 4 picks and that's the person you really covet, don't trade back. Like, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I need somebody to come to me with that offer. I'm not calling around for that offer,
sure.
Kevin. I'm not calling around to say, I want to move back in this draft. What do you got? I do want somebody to come to me and say, hey, we want to move up. Here's what we're trying to work to acquire. And because then I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable in that position. But more than anything, I am perfectly fine sitting right where I am and letting the cards fall to me.
Okay.
Like I really think this is one of those moments where I can just sit here and grab a good player, add him to my team, because I'm not panicking to build an entire team right now. I've already built a good team. And
Sure.
whenever you built a pretty good team, you can say, okay, what else can we add to this roster? What do we not have that we can use to make it more dynamic offensively? What do we not have on the defensive side of the ball that we can use? So it gives me a lot of options there at 26 to just let it fall in my lap. If I'm a team that's like, man, we have so many spots to fill and we're so talent deprived, then yes, I have to move up and or down for this. But this is one of those I feel comfortable staying.
Okay, and that makes sense to me, and I really want to pick Stephen Jones' brain about this. I'm guessing he's probably not going to be like, well, you know what, Kevin, we have scouted this to the T, and we absolutely want to trade down. But I am curious because every draft is different, right? Like you might see a draft where you're thinking the top half of this first round is absolutely stacked, and people are falling over each other to get in there. Or you might see this draft where you're like, dude, I have like 80 second and third round grades. So that's where the value is. I want to pick his brain about like how they value charted this draft out.
Yeah, I do love the idea of having so many quarterbacks that I don't really need going up high and pushing things down.
Well,
you know, like I don't need a quarterback, so that means other things are falling to me. Or maybe I do need a quarterback.
You would love to see Hendon Hooker get drafted before you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Although not everyone feels that way because you know it. You could have predicted it ahead of time. I don't care if you trade up or down. You have to come away with a quarterback in this draft. Now, if you're saying that because you want somebody to compete with Cooper Rush, fair enough. If you're saying that because you think they're going to take over for Dak, there is literally, I'm going to say no chance in hell. There's almost no chance in hell. I would be shocked if anything in that space happened. Hell, even if let's say they took Hendon Hooker at pick 26. It's not for now.
No.
So I hate to disappoint people.
It is to add to the quarterback school that Mike McCarthy wants to run out there. That's all it's for. And because, or I don't know, Kevin, maybe Hendon Hooker does show up and everybody's like, look at the talent on this guy. Well, Dak's contract is coming up.
That's fine.
Are we ready to do this?
That's fine. You implement a 2-year plan. I'm fine with all of that. But if the next part of your sentence is maybe he can play now, that's not going to happen.
Okay,
That is not going to happen. And then somebody asked, this is an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about this before. If Carter has the same, not our Carter, the Carter in the draft.
Carter?
No, the Carter in the draft
Jalen
has the same career as Jadeveon Clowney, would he be considered a bust? I don't think so, because I think he's going to go maybe to the Eagles at pick 10 or maybe at pick 9. That is honestly a world difference between pick 1. I think Jadeveon Clowney, he's not a bust, but I think he's absolutely had a disappointing career as a number 1
as predicted
pick.
On this show.
You did predict that.
Corey Majors.